Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ears Conversation. Have you got good judgment? Do you think you've got good taste? Well, then this is the episode for you, because I sit down with Frank Dias, who's one of the leading voices for AI in internal comms, and we talk about why human judgment and taste will be the differentiator between the best internal communicators in the next era. So we dive deep on how you can reshape your role and your team to be better equipped with AI for the next era of enterprise growth. And we also question if the relationship between internal communicators and intranet vendors is changing and what impact that might have on you and your role. So let's get into it. Hi, Frank, and welcome to the AX Conversation. It's very hot in here. Well, in London, it's boiling and I'm in a glass box. So if I start sweating, then you know why. But thanks for joining me on such a hot day. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Excited to have you.
No, looking forward to this one, Kaz. Yeah, and thanks for reaching out.
This is going to be a good episode. I know it because in the kind of internal communication space, and I've spoken to a lot of internal comms people, AI comes up, but it comes up not in a very detailed way. We kind of look at it for ad hoc improvements, but we rarely ever get deep into that topic. So I'm excited to get deep into the topic. But before we get there, you do actually come from an internal comms background originally, right?
Yeah, my last sort of 15 odd years, I've been working in global internal comms for my sins, mostly within the financial services industry. And then I really sort of got to know AI in November 22 when ChatGPT came out, and I was heading up a global internal comms team at the time. And then I moved into a comms lead role for a change program all to do with AI. And now in my current role, I am an AI adoption and change consultant. So I've done an interesting pivot from the comms skills into change. However, all of that's super relevant, and actually anyone can do this.
Yeah. So what was the kind of point that you felt that pivot happened? Was it something that was was it something that the organization drove? Was it like a point in which you were working, you realized that there might be an opportunity there? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I think when ChatGPT came out, when I started to experiment with it, and in particular curiosity, because many comms people are curious,
Hmm.
um, I looked at it and thought, actually, this is all about words in, it's all about clarity of a brief in the middle, and then
Hmm.
its output is all words. And so that really helped me frame it as a comms tool from the get-go. And the moment you can start to frame it, it means that you can start to enable your own behaviors and thinking to look
Hmm.
at it in a different light. And so that really unlocked it. And then the second part was all to do with how comms people connected with social media when it first came out. And over a decade worth of being part of comms communities, I saw comms people not really engaging with social media because they didn't use it. And if you
Hmm.
don't use it, you don't understand it, but they had accounts on it. And it really highlighted to me that comms people are wonderful at communicating other people's communications, but for themselves, it's a real challenge to think, what do I communicate about myself? And so I realized that the comms community are going to be slow for this AI thing. And I thought,
Hmm.
I love all this stuff. If I get on it first, then I can help share and help others come along with me later on.
Do you think that internal comms truly has a stake in the AI game?
I definitely think so. At the end of the day, if we look at what we do, it's all about sometimes drafting comms and emails, all colleague emails, intranet posts, leadership scripts, town hall stuff. All of that is the production layer, if you really
Hmm.
think about it. And we've built, I guess, a strong identity to that. However, this stuff of AI can convert that into a commodity overnight, really.
Hmm.
And then for some of you, that might be very worrying. It might induce anxiety. But the reality is, when we look back over all of our different sort of internal comms surveys, when I've looked at that feedback, they've always summed up that we don't have enough time and we want to be more strategic. And therefore, when a tool like AI comes along that has this sort of power and potential to sort of enable and empower us to achieve both of those things, why
Mhm.
aren't we accelerating our embrace of it? And that's definitely a question I would ask you as well, Kaz, is why do you think that we're not quite embracing it as much as maybe we should?
I think there's so from my own experience of AI, I think there's like an interesting, the kind of trajectory in which you see the value of AI isn't isn't kind of like a direct ladder. And so I feel like the kind of AI whirlwind has focused on and encouraged internal communicators to get maybe some of the or see some of the surface level value, which might be in the creating content. It might be in the changing that content for different audiences. It might be in crafting posts for certain things. But in my experience, the more transformational way that I've personally used it has involved um, more investment in time and more creativity in trying to zoom out on what am I doing in my job um, if I look at my work day, like what actually am I doing in that? What would I like to do? What don't I like doing? And how can I get a same or better output in less time? And asking some of those difficult questions has led me for me to kind of like throw my workday on its head. And because at the beginning, it was yeah, as I say, it wasn't that linear journey. And I think it's taken me to kind of do some work on what I like doing, spending a lot of time in forums looking at what Claude can and can't do, um, cheat sheets and prompts and people like yourself on LinkedIn trying to like really push my understanding of what it is. And I think when you're so caught up in the day to day, and sometimes quite wedded to some of the things that AI is doing that you actually quite like. For example, a lot of internal comms people we've had on this podcast come from journalism backgrounds. They like writing. And so when you see the surface level improvements, you think, okay, cool, it can do it and it can do it quicker. But is it better? And I quite enjoy doing this as well. So I would say one of the things holding people back is maybe not seeing the wood for the trees. Is that the right saying? Yeah, like not be take seeing the surface level stuff and not being able to zoom out and being like, okay, if I had all the time in the world, what would my ideal workday look like, and can I get there with looking at AI? And I think that's the question people should be asking, rather than, oh, what's a single thing that I can do, or what are other people using it for? But like asking that question, which is a difficult question to ask yourself, um, especially when you're kind of like busy all the time.
Yeah, I think you hit a nail on the head there with regards to. I don't think I know of any communicators in my entire career in communicating whereby they've got time in their hands and are not busy, which
Mhm.
makes it very tricky when you trying to learn something at the same time, and you're trying to do experiments or testing or
Mhm.
evaluating when you actually don't have the luxury of time to do that. So yeah, it's a really tricky point that we find ourselves in. I think we've definitely started to embrace it. I'm seeing a
Yeah.
lot more maturity with comms people, conversations at conferences, online, and everything.
Mhm.
It's moving in the right direction.
I think it's taken people like yourself that truly understand an internal communicator's role to take a step back and start adding value in new and different ways. Because I could probably go on LinkedIn now and scroll past 100 posts where internal comms people are talking about AI in some way, shape, or form. But is it saying anything um, new or unique or different or transformational? Probably not. And so that's where it's taken someone that understands the core of the role and what makes those people tick to say, hey, there is a different world out there. So super grateful to people like yourself for showing them that, because it's taught me stuff as well. Let's move on to the deep dive area, because we had a bit of back and forth about certain topics that you had. You gave me um, a few different detailed options, and I went, let's take the most controversial one. So one of those was to do with in where human judgment sits in internal comms and AI in the workplace. So tell me a little bit about this kind of area and what's top of mind for you when it comes to human judgment at the moment in the workplace.
I think it's something that we've never really talked about and called it out as a proper skill, which actually, because of AI, the irony is we're now trying to dial that up and actually say that actually the unique selling point of all of us is not the producing newsletters, organizing intranets. It is actually our judgment,
Hmm.
all of our learned experience and expertise to that point whereby we're hired on our judgment effectively via interviews,
Hmm.
with a little bit of mix of stats and data and delivery. But really, it's our judgment that people base it on in terms of our answers that we give. So I
Hmm.
think we're definitely, it's an interesting point to be able to call out judgment. It's a trickier point to actually start to define it into something that's super easy to understand, because all of our judgment collectively is different and unique. So we
Hmm.
could both be doing the same type of work, but we would do it in slightly different ways, or we'd make different points around different answers.
Hmm.
So it's one of the things we're doing at Quilter is we've built an AI learning program, but our core piece in all of that is not the tool, it's actually human judgment. And we've
Hmm.
really sort of gone in hard on that to really try and build that in as the decision maker effectively. And that sort of relates to governance as well in that space.
So do you think you used a term earlier, which was like the production layer? Um, and you kind of articulated some of the activities that go in that. It might be editing or creating intranet content or distributing emails. Do you think as a profession we've maybe overinvested in the production layer and created a role that is maybe defined by the production layer?
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing as such, because haven't had a tool like AI come along. We've probably seen it in the movies, but never
Hmm.
had a reality check on what does that mean for our world of work. So it's just really around um, trying to make sure that we dial up the right things now that we're seeing certain challenges
Hmm.
whereby certain tools could actually do some of that heavy lifting. But when I come back to those internal comms surveys where we've said that we just don't have enough time, but we'd love to be doing more strategic things, that should be the basis by which we then say AI or agents or agentic systems, let's build them right to handle a lot of that other more time consuming task, which require not much thinking or judgment, but require a lot of our time and energy. And if we
Hmm.
can put that forward and label and say, that's what I want to use AI for, and also design what we don't want AI to be used for, which is our judgment, then we can start to build out a clearer, more confident route map to be able to say with confidence what we're actually looking for from adding value to what we do.
Hmm. So that is kind of that's the bit I was talking about earlier, isn't it? Which is like zooming out and looking at like what you're good at and where we add value. Um, do you think there are maybe with this kind of new lens that there is an increased importance of human judgment? Are there ways in which we should try and upskill ourselves or reskill ourselves or things that we should be doing with that in mind?
I think it's definitely around our need to be able to be better at reframing challenges in our head, particularly to unlock our ability to be more curious. We need to be super adaptive to the situation that we have in all of our workplaces. whereby our senior leaders are also having to adapt and make decisions. And all of that comes down to how quickly can we learn and start to integrate new ways of working, which
Mhm.
help keep us relevant, help keep us relatable with regards to our value that we give back to the businesses and the people that we serve. So I definitely think there's an opportunity more for people to really dial up their USP, which really is their judgment
Mhm.
and their taste in what good looks like and what effective looks like.
I really like that. So that judgment and taste, and I think um, I buy into this idea. But when I see the reality of the situation, and I mentioned LinkedIn earlier, I could probably go on LinkedIn now and make a good judgment about how much of that has been created with or by AI. And my probably quite judgmental view is that people aren't exercising taste or judgment. And that's not to say, I mean, I use AI for a lot of different purposes, but there's still a there's still something not clicking when it comes to the output that's being delivered and the quality of that output. Um, and this doesn't just apply to internal communicators, right? It applies to the employees. And when we're thinking of like what internal comms teams are doing, could part of it being instilling better human judgment and taste and communication skills to work alongside AI?
100%. But you first need to believe in yourself, and in particular, really understand both the capabilities of the tool and the limitations of the tool that you have access to, but also look inward to yourself with regards to your own capabilities and limitations.
Hmm.
And then you need to do some of your own personal maths to then be able to uh, make that equation stick, whereby you actually see your part to play a lot more stronger by working with AI in that.
Hmm.
And then you really sort of need to hone what it is that is your personal voice, whereby
Hmm.
you always add your angle to that and you understand that angle. And now, in an ironic point of view, if you can feed let's say, Claude, plenty examples of your writing before AI, then you
Hmm.
can ask it to do a deep dive into your style, your tone, certain bits and pieces that you might not be aware of, because
Hmm.
it's a pattern machine. And we don't do that enough in terms of our own self reflections. So you can actually use AI to help unlock some of your own self reflections to then
Hmm.
help you better understand your authentic voice when you are working with comms.
I've seen some people share some of the kind of like input questions for like Claude AI to ask you to say, hey, I want to create my personal style. And you can feed it some of your content, but then also trying to, I guess, fine tune it by letting it ask you things like, what do you think about this scenario? Or how would you approach this? Yeah, there's no question. There's no question there, but I thought
I was
it was
waiting.
quite cool. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, are you a fan of that sort of method of like really crafting something that is really a strong personal style and a better idea of how you write and taste your personal taste? Do you think that's something we should all strive towards as internal communicators, like really looking inward and getting a really um, thorough personal brand and style and storytelling style?
So, otherwise, how are you going to stand out from the crowd? If everyone has access to these tools,
Hmm.
then there's going to be a generic level that people reach for the majority. How do you then stand out to make sure that your work that you do um, rises above all of that generalization of how we do our comms? So I
Hmm.
definitely think that the more you do more self-reflection on your own style and really question your judgment and really look
Hmm.
at how you can start to um, pull that out a lot more so that you're a lot more self-aware. That means that you start to program yourself around knowing your sort of true identity when it comes to the value that you give to a business.
Hmm. That's that interesting point around like a lot of people over relying on it will give outputs that are just uh, the kind of like generic output or from your competitors, let's say. And I've seen actually some really interesting examples, not to make this about Unily, but I saw some really interesting examples where, um, so Unily was kind of like an AI native employee experience platform, right? And we had some really interesting workshops internally to define our narratives there um, without AI and quite human led workshops with terminology and we put together what we thought was really strong positioning, quite unique. And then, as other players in the market have tried to create something or deliver technology which is in line with that, what we started to see is very similar positioning and terminology, which is what we delivered. And so, um, I've already started to see it in like our specific market, which is that people creating outputs with AI based on things and delivering not a direct copy, but something very similar, but not unique. And that's kind of frustrating because like that takes out this like, oh, like where's the fun in that, you know? um, but it's an interesting time, specifically talking about intranets and Unily. One of the topics that you proposed as a kind of wildcard topic, looking at the roles and responsibilities, I guess, of intranets and employee experience platform vendors. Um, what's your view on that? Where where does an intranet sit? Because it used to be that an intranet vendors and internal comms were best friends, like a chief people officer and a HRIS. Is that relationship souring or is it just changing? What is it?
Oh, this topic has been on my mind for some time, particularly when you start to commoditize all that production stuff. And when you look at intranets, you can say, in one angle, you could say it's a bit of a production factory, or at least houses content for employees to come visit. And then the other side of it is writing that content, putting together that content. And in the middle of all of that, you then have comms professionals, whereby we've always helped with that. Now that you have this tool like AI, and many intranet providers are adding and baking in AI
Mhm,
into content production, then in effect, one angle could be the CEO just needs to interact with that intranet platform to
mhm,
actually do all of their comms for them. And so that it's a really fascinating one that's been on my mind for some time, because then you say, do we just bypass the world of communicators if we can go direct to the actual decision makers, the actual budget holders, with regards to working with them?
mhm,
Now, commercially, yeah, there's some interesting points here, but my caveat again in that is um, the question of should that be a direction of travel? Because
mhm,
the difference between a not alive platform, which can give a CEO or senior leader reach, or any other employee within the company reach, at the end of the day, it can't give them that human judgment, that expertise, that better understanding of how that content will land based on real world knowledge that comms professionals bring to this. And so
mhm,
stripping out our sort of role in that for certain decision makers, simply for faster, more, I guess, confident or more sycophantic type of content, potentially could be ending up being worse decisions when that type of content goes out to employees, whereby a comms professional hasn't actually added or had the opportunity to add real takes to it, to align it better to so
mhm.
much of the priorities and strategies that's going on. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting space to explore, but I think we still add value to that So there's definitely a call to action that we need to make sure that we are adding that value to the decision makers, the CEOs, the people who hold the budget. We do need to really make sure that our value is well received.
And I guess there's a rebalancing over time whereby, um, I mean, obviously everyone has different experiences of this within their own organizations and industries, but there was kind of this broader narrative that internal comms did have a heightened strategic importance during the COVID years, as they started to operate closer to C-suite, and that maybe that kind of like dawn was left behind in that time. And then we kind of got back down to these kind of like production layers. Um, and that's not to say that that is the same for everybody, but it is kind of a narrative that some people do see and believe. I think if you look at also the recruitment market as well, and how that recruitment and internal comms roles have changed, that's quite relevant there. Also, what does sycophancy mean? I feel like I've heard the word before, but I
That's
don't know what
right.
it means.
Yeah, it's when, because at the end of the day, these machines are built to please. So the
Right.
way the AI labs have built them, they're there to please.
Uh-huh.
So whenever they're generating outputs, unless you've set up customized instructions to say, don't always be my super cheerleader in every single viewpoint I have when I put it in here, then that's where you end up navel gazing at yourself because you think
Got
you're great.
you.
And
Yes.
another classic example of that is when you spot a mistake by it, like a hallucination or something very wrong,
Hmm.
and you call it out, and then it immediately goes, "Oh yes, you're so right. What a great point that you've made. I'm so sorry. You're brilliant." And so it's that sort of thing to be aware of.
Well, I just thought
Um,
I was great at everything. I
oh,
thought
you are,
AI was
Kaz,
yeah.
is the answer. That's so. I don't think it's sycophantic to you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, okay, yeah. It's my AI, I'm sure, is the perfect one.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. But you are right though, and it's kind of interesting as well because one of the reasons why I don't like or stop using ChatGPT and started to look for alternatives was because of how overbearing it was, and I was like, oh, it's a bit cringe. Come on, I like to play hard to get, so um,
That's why like certain people can jailbreak these models because they
mhm,
don't enjoy all of these guardrails and system instructions, and they jailbreak them. And there's no such thing as an AI model that can't be jailbroken.
mhm.
And we recently saw that with Anthropic's release of Fable 5, which is meant to be the most powerful AI model
Oh
out
yeah, of
there.
course, yeah.
And then someone showed off how they removed all of the guardrails and safety checks, and
Hmm.
then the US government said turn it off, and so they
Yes,
did.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And I guess it's kind of this idea of like, well, I mean, this is one of the issues that persists in the market is that not just clearly with that example with Fable, but also just generally in any market, things are moving so fast, and it's so difficult to kind of keep up with um, what the reality is, how I should reskill, what I should be doing. You use that example there of like, for example, potentially CEOs getting closer to things like intranets to observe sentiment data. Yeah, actually, that's a very real example. I think one of our customers, British Airways, use that their C-suite stayed close to that sentiment data from within Unily to get a view of what policies are landing, what's not, what do we need to change, what we need to pivot. So then, where does that leave that internal comms role, especially if as that tech gets closer to the C-suite? And actually, from a candid perspective, we tend to find that we actually are working with like COOs are coming up, chief people officers. The kind of seniority has got higher from our perspective, and also the diversification of roles that are interested in that intranet space has definitely got bigger. So, um, how does the internal communicator ensure it stays close to that intranet, or does it just change and evolve and actually play a more personal role alongside the C-suite? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we need to really invert the pyramid that we've built. and it's an opportunity to really take stock in how we've always done stuff in a comms department for decades, to actually now start to say, where's our true value lie in this? And therefore, if it's all about human judgment as our unique selling point, then it has to be human relationships
Hmm.
in parallel with that. We need to dial up more. And I've always had the read about comms, wise comms people saying, go out there and meet your employees or your customers. Do
Hmm.
that regularly rather than sitting at your desk just doing your comms stuff.
Hmm.
And there's an opportunity here to really be plugged in more so than surveys, polls, but actually listening to people, talking to people, whereby our value can really be dialed up in the direction of trusted advisor. And we've always
Hmm.
talked about us being trusted advisors. It's now an opportunity to really unpack that in this
Hmm.
AI era. What does that mean? And that means being super close to the C-suite and the executive around the priorities that they've set for their department, so that we can get super close to advising on that so that they can achieve their priorities with
Hmm.
different levels of advice that we now give and do.
Yeah. And it's actually something that I and we as a product have observed, because when we first started leveraging AI within the platform, the first use case, you think, okay, there's a real opportunity to dissolve the blank page, right? So we went content creation, and we still have that within the platform. But what we saw was our internal communicators like the written word, they like writing and creating. And so um, we actually, there's a thing that hasn't been announced yet, but one thing we've been looking towards is, okay, with this new lens of internal comms teams that are all about trusted advisors, human judgment, governance, also with like a lot of um, kind of AI created content in the workplace, whether that's in Teams messages or emails. I'm sure we all see it, but then kind of internal comms team honing in on what we are creating being the kind of Bible or the trusted record of what's happening, when that's happening, how that's going to happen. And so the kind of this rigor, it's like we're now trying to create our technology to partner with teams that are thinking that way. And seeing the direction of travel there is going to ultimately shape our product roadmap. And so I'm now into product teams, so that's something I'm really excited to um, change our direction on, because I think that, as you've described, like there is something that is changing there, and it's going to have to get more and better. Because I even see it on Unile's own personal intranet that a lot of AI created content with sometimes misinformation inaccuracies, hallucinations, and there's limited time for employees for comms. So if you're spending your time and you're seeing something that's inaccurate, potentially making business decisions based on it, it's definitely a business risk.
Um, the more we can particularly position ourselves as experts in the flow of communications within organizations, whereby we understand or go and seek out where are the bottlenecks, because at the end of the day, your point is really valid that employees just don't have time to read all the stuff that's sent to them.
Hmm.
And when you look at it, they're just trying to do their job. And I realized this from one of my roles, whereby less communication is actually valuable to employees to help them do their job, and just their mental capacity to get on with their job, knowing that they're not flooded with communications, which comes down to elements of hyper personalization and really filtering. But then this is where communication departments have a real opportunity to
Hmm.
own some of this, so that then they can advise teams like yourselves at Unily around these are the challenges we have. We're trying to um, really be more cognizant of our employees first. If they are to get on with their job and add value, then we need to tackle what I've recently heard coined on the world of LinkedIn, infobesity,
Ah,
whereby too
yes.
much information is clogging people's minds. And I call it myself, I call it story yelling, whereby
Hmm.
different areas of the business just feels that their comms is the most important comms in the world.
Hmm.
Everyone needs to read it.
Hmm. Um, I, I, I'm really big on that idea, and I think that it's still some way to go. I think there are, like, as you say, those infobesity. I know Sharon O'Day is speaking about it. You're speaking about it. People are speaking about the volume of communication, but people think the action there is just less communication. But it's also um, being much more purposeful and structured. Um, Also, this idea that people are now getting information from affectionately named AI assistants in their workplace that is a wraparound of their corporate content. So, how that content is structured, what it's capturing, uh, even the volume within that, so there's clarity. These are things that enterprise organizations need to be thinking about, right?
Yeah. This is where I come back to the point of communication teams really being interested in the flow of communication within their organization. And that goes both ways, from top down to bottom, all the way
Hmm.
from bottom back to top. And
Hmm.
how does that work? How does that whole process work within your organization? Therefore, starting to streamline that and then working with core partners who are part of your platforms and channels and challenging them to help you achieve what you really need to achieve, to do that sort of more hyper personalized communication so that it's relevant to the readers rather than most of our blanket comms that we send out.
So we've spoken about some big concepts and changes that are happening in the industry and the internal comms roles, and your experience and my experience with AI and where we see it going. But to be a bit more direct, if I'm an internal communicator watching this, what practically could and should I do in order to future proof my role?
I think that's a good question. It's a question that many comms people are trying to realize today. I think one of the core pieces really is around the boring topic of governance and ethics as well, in
Mm,
terms of it's quite critical to all of the or most comms professionals out there. And one of the things I recently released in partnership working with the Chartered Institute of PR, or CIPR, was our sort of AI ethics guide, which was released in May,
yes, I
which is
saw
all
that.
about a playbook to help communicators build more confidence with regards to trying to deal with the vastness of ethics. And one of the things I call out in the playbook is these sort of 5 ethical roles that we all play when we're being a communicator, which is being a sense maker, being a trust steward, being a risk spotter, being a sort of governance enabler, and really around change and capability enabler as well,
Hmm.
whereby we're all trying to make sure that we do the right thing in our actual job. And so it's trying to give people that steer. And one of
Hmm.
the things I would say and recommend to people to do is work with AI as a team sport rather than an individual sport. Come
Mm,
together as a team and build your own team governance around what do you use AI for, what don't you use AI for, what do you dial up with regards to your value that you give, and what is the value that you want AI to add to your team so that it enhances you. And I think if you start to build out your own mini charter, so to speak, then you're setting yourself in a more mature way around all the future decisions you'll need to make when it comes to working with AI, and being more responsible with it. So
mhm.
I'd definitely recommend the CIPR um, guide there, that playbook, because we go into that in more detail and tell you how to do some of that as well.
Mhm. We spoke about the kind of volume of communication, and the one big difference I see between comms teams that are delivering and have that front of mind versus those that are caught up in the day-to-day communicating is a charter, and really investing in something that we stand by, that the leadership team can be visible of and approve of, and is also a good mechanism to help say no. And
Yes.
that's the single biggest difference for me, is really investing and putting that work into a good charter that um, is deep and has specific rules that you can work with the business on. So I think that's a great guide. I did have a look at that as well, and that's super helpful. And also, I think your point around bringing people together to have different types of conversations, because was it over a year and a half ago, we both did a webinar together based on some of the Unity research, and
Yeah, mind the gap.
yeah, mind the gap, mind the AI gap. And one of the big findings out of that was I got to look at the individual responses. And what I found was that no matter how much people used AI or how passionately they spoke about it, all of the improvements they seemed to be seeing were individual productivity improvements. Didn't really speak about working with teams or people or benefit to the broader organization. It all felt very personal productivity driven. I think um, if we're looking to really as you said, reshape what internal comms do and future proof it and have a new, more kind of prosperous profession, then that requires bringing the minds together, not just using it for my personal productivity. Cool.
100%. I think the future direction is redesign, and that all
Hmm.
comes from redesigning the target operating model of organizations, and then you filter that down by departments and teams. Therefore,
Yeah.
the more you do this year into next year and do stuff early, whereby you build your systems, you build the foundational material that makes up what the comms team is all about,
Hmm.
that puts you in a really strong position to be able to then redesign your department, your team, and what you do for the organization, which means that you unlock real conversations at a strategic level with senior decision makers to say why we're still relevant.
Cool. Amazing, Frank. I want to do a slight pivot, and we have a kind of section towards the end, which is a bit more light-hearted and fun, with some quick fire questions. One of the things I wanted to ask you was thinking about your career, and you've had a bit of a pivot in your career as well. And you've probably seen a lot of tech changes in that time. What's something you wish you'd known at the start of your career? Um, that, yeah, what's one thing you wish you'd known at the start of your career?
I think it would have to be about how to really focus your attention on building relationships with key stakeholders,
Hmm.
and building up your confidence in working with them, and in particularly really joining the dots about their priorities and how communication can really help and be streamlined to solely help them achieve what they're trying to set out to do. And I think
Hmm.
if there was more structure, guidance, training, learning to have helped me back when I was starting, that is a super valuable direction of travel and would give you really important skills. That would be what I would want to sort of see.
Nice. And one of the things that we have as a regular on this is the idea of like the room 101. What one thing or idea or concept from the workplace would you like to put in the trash?
Well, there's so many things out there that's all to do with theatre instead of substance. I
Hmm.
think the one that I'm going to call out is the annual engagement survey.
Yeah.
And for me, particularly in many different organizations I've worked in, they love gathering and then love reporting on engagement of the survey, and they tend to put too much dial up on how many people completed it and not enough on really the actions and really hearing what people are saying.
Hmm.
And one case in point as an example of that is when asked, do you want to work from the office or from home more? Certain organizations gathered it, but then still made the decision, no, you got to come into
Right.
the office. So for me, there's an element of theatre behind it, and performative action, and I'd just love to actually see deeper, real change from it.
Yeah, probably fewer questions, or only asking questions where you're
Yeah,
genuinely
that's right.
interested
Yeah,
in
that's
the
it. And
outcome
do
and willing
something
for this.
about it. Yeah,
Exactly right. Yeah,
exactly.
nice. So to be honest, so we also have this thing where the last question is always from the last guest. But I actually forgot to ask our last guest what question you want for our next guest. This is the first time this has happened, so it's meant to be a tradition, and I've broken the tradition. Therefore, I'm going to make one up. And so, do you? Oh, okay, I've got one. So, do you think in 5 years' time there will be more internal comms professionals or less internal comms professionals working in that so-called that particular profession?
It's a good question. 5 years, I think, is a decent timescale. That's realistic. I would like to see within 5 years that actually the whole concept of internal communication gets redesigned, and therefore our roles need to evolve, because there's always the talk of roles going, and there's also talk of roles being replaced with new AI-friendly roles, not with the machines, but with people. So
Yeah,
I would love to see more of that evolution of comms, and we need really bold communication leaders to help lead the way, to really change that, so that we can realize that future, and new roles for communicators. Because our skills are
nice.
super transferable. What are those new roles out there that we should be
Yes,
leading on?
yeah, and arguably those skills are the value of them is heightened with AI if you really unpick it. There's definitely an opportunity, but you're right, it does take someone with a point of view to be bold and to drive it forward, and for examples for people to learn from, to set standards in order for that to advance. Nice, thank you. That pretty much brings us to a close. But before we go, do you have any question? Oh, well, what one question? I can't make the same mistake again.
I
What
was
question would
gonna
you
bring it
like
up.
to? Yeah, that would have been funny too. Yeah. So, what question would you like for our next guest, who actually is an internal comms person? So, yeah.
Oh, are they? That's good.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I'll have a think. What my question is, what was the thing that they have been most wrong about?
Oh, love that. Self-reflective. So yeah, Frank, thank you so much. I always learn a lot from you, and I really value getting into deep conversations on AI and challenging the topics that we talk about on this podcast as well. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, always a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to chatting the next time.
Thank you very much, and thank you
Thanks,
to all
Frank.
of our listeners.
If you enjoyed the episode, then remember to click to subscribe, because there's much more where that came from. And let us know in the comments which bits you've enjoyed and found super insightful. Also, if you would like to be part of the EX conversation and feature on the podcast, then please get in touch.